we have plans, and then we have contingency plans to those plans to make sure, how can we truly mitigate the risk? What is the worst case scenario? If we need to hold longer, are we capable to do that? Do we have the runway to do that? When we're looking at our returns, our minimum, like when we're evaluating, if we have a deal come across our table and it doesn't have a minimum of a 15% IRR, we're not entertaining it. That's not for our investors.
Welcome back to Keeping It Real Estate, everyone. Today's guest is Julie Hawley, the founder of 3 Keys Investment and the podcast, The Conscious Investor. From being a former teacher to an avid mountain biker, we talk about the lessons learned from this and applied in the real estate market. Welcome to the show, Julie.
I am so happy to be here, Dan.
I am too. I'm excited to have you. Wow. An interesting story. You were a public school teacher to a real estate investor. What made you make that switch, and how, and all that?
And all of it, right? Yeah, it's a pretty big chasm if you think about it. But in reality, it makes so much sense. So my parents have both these backgrounds, pedigrees. I'm 3rd generation in real estate, and I was following also my mom's footsteps in education. So very fascinating to be the first person to break out of residential real estate and go into the commercial real estate space. But honestly, it was a lot of heartache and pain and doubt, fear, uncertainty that led me into the investing arena. When I was in my early 20s as a young public school teacher, I found myself in a very destructive relationship, and so I had to exit. I'm like, okay, for health and well-being, I need to exit this. I ended up with a mortgage payment on my own unexpectedly. That wasn't part of the plan, and I'm thinking, how am I going to make this off of my piddly new teacher salary? Right? It was terrifying. And God is good. God always provides. So it worked out. But then they started handing out pink slips. And here I was thinking, I can contribute to the world. I can do great things in the world. And I can also have this whole retirement at the end of like contributing and serving and helping raise up this next generation. I'm going to have this retirement waiting for me. It's going to be grand. Well, what happens if you get laid off? What happens if you get let go? And so my rosy-eyed glasses of the government and government positions shifted dramatically. And that's where I realized I have to be able to watch my own back and take care of myself. And so at that moment, I made this decision of I'm going to go into residential real estate sales, which worked out really great. And I stashed a lot of money. I learned a lot, because when you make a teacher salary and you get these checks, you're like, I've never seen any of this before. And you just like stash it. Like, I don't know what's going to happen. And it's real estate. You don't know what's going to happen. And ultimately I went back into education, and I've really it's been cool. I've pivoted between and woven these 2 arenas so tightly together that it's led me from house hacking so I could make my mortgage payment, into single family investing, into, oh my gosh, that feels vulnerable. I have children now. I don't want this one-to-one ratio. Felt very insecure, very vulnerable. And so I'm like, okay, looked at my husband, there has to be a better way. And we found the better way. And that was through investing in, commercial real estate, mainly apartment complexes.
Wow. So what shifted in the government? You said the government shifted that made you make this switch. What changed?
Well, when they start handing out pink slips, that to me was a reality check. It just made me realize I'm expendable, right? Like, there is nothing special about any teacher, any position. It's a numbers game, just like corporate America.
And what are pink slips? What are they?
Yeah, pink slips are where they will just say, okay, well, you may not have a position next year.
Okay.
So yes, that's a great question if people don't know, if they've never been around that. But in general, any type of, it's used not just in government jobs, but in other industries as well. So if you're in the tech industry right now, I know a lot of people are feeling this, and they know, oh my gosh, I may get laid off. In a sense, if somebody's even mentioned that to you, it's almost like it's the equivalent of a pink slip.
Yeah. Wow. Got it. Okay. So you're a teacher, you're seeing the pink slip come around. you start Three Keys Investment, right? It's correct. It's Three Keys, not Three Key Investment.
Yeah, it's Three Keys, plural. Three, third generation realtor. Three, it was good enough for Jesus. So I'm like, three is good enough for God. I'm like, Trinity. And then, hey, let's just face it, three, you know the truth about most things after three bites, three runs. We both, love snowboarding. Three runs, you can know if it's going to be a good day on the mountain or not. Like, I'm like, after one, you're kind of like maybe. Two, you're like, all right, I'm getting a feel. By the third of anything, if it's good or if it's lasting. So that's how Three Keys Investments came around. But it actually came around when I moved to far north Idaho on the Canadian border. That's when we left the single family space and decided there's a better investment strategy. And through a copious amounts of podcast episodes and research, making that transition and realizing, and I'm going to give full credit, I believe in paying it forward, like reading Michael Blanc's book on, I literally went through exactly what he said on how to start up your company. I'm like, here's the book. I'm just going to do this like a textbook basically. And I just went through, okay, great. Get my LLC, check, do this, and just plugged away at it.
Wow. And so Three Keys Investments helps people get into multifamily deals as passive investors. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. And now we've even included, we've made a transition, we've become very clear on our investment thesis. And that is always, we are here to provide housing, quality housing for humans. And so what that means for our company is we are going to be providing quality homes for people in apartment complexes. And we've extended that to assisted living facilities as well. Have we looked at student housing? Yes. Do we love it? No. That would provide housing for humans, which is part of ours. But at some point, you want to get really good at one thing before you're branching off so that that you are moving forward with confidence. I know that you and Mike have done that over the years of building your portfolio. It's like, you don't want to bite off more than you can choose. And that slowed me down so much when I started my, commercial investing in commercial real estate with shiny object syndrome, with the markets, with the asset classes. And so really getting clear as to what do I want to do through my investing. It's not just about making money. Like good investing extends and transcends the dollars and the cents. It says, great, I'm covered, my investors are covered, and how is this also supporting the residents and a community? That's good investing.
Yeah, agreed. What year did you start your company?
Oh, golly. I think I may have I looked at the LLC recently and I'm like, was that 2018? I really didn't get started until 2019. And we got started as passive investors first, because if you're going to expect, I knew based on my background and my pedigree of a teacher, right? Being an educator, and that comes, let's face it, teachers teach for a reason. They have a heart, they have compassion, they usually have a lot of patience. There's something that is unique about who you are, how you're wired. So always like looking at what is my general natural makeup? How was I naturally created, and what are my natural giftings, and what's my natural inclination, right? And so when I looked at what I wanted to contribute into the investing space, it was like, oh yeah, wait, I want to teach, educate, support, and serve people. That means, I want to bring in capital partners. I want to bring in passive investors. How can I possibly ethically bring in people into something that I have never done? So essentially the first entire year of investing was actually, okay, let me passively invest. Let me convert. Let me roll over self-directed funds. Let me begin the infinite banking process. And so that entire first year it lags. It felt like it lagged because it was me getting in and setting that and blazing that trail instead of saying, hey, follow me, let's go together and we'll make that. It was like, okay, let me go and let me, again, we like mountains. Like, let me go and scope out, what does that bike trail look like? What does that run? Is it icy? If I'm snowboarding, is it icy on the top right now? What are the conditions? What can we actually pull off? I want to do that for our investors. Let me go and let me scope this out, because losing people's money or not being able to follow through and perform because of a lack of experience or a lack of network where you can actually tap into the genius of others. Like, that's not something I was willing to do, a risk that I was willing to take.
I mean, good on you. That's step one, is get experience and understand what you're doing before you start bringing other people's capital in. And I think one thing that's noteworthy, you guys, that Julie mentioned here, is just get great at one asset class first before you start doing a bunch of them. I mean, you get a lot of people who are in office, and they're in storage, and they're in apartments, and they're in retail, and all of a sudden they don't do anything well. They're doing all of them decently well. So great point there. In terms of raising capital, what's your guys' strategy or approach? Like, when you're speaking to potential investors, what's your general, return look like, or hold period, some of that information?
Right. I think it's fun when I speak with investors. It's interesting to look at how that has transitioned over the years, right? It used to be, and I was never the I want your money type person. I made a commitment, and this is where I think, if someone's interested in going down the capital raise path journey, you have to make some commitments at the very beginning. One of the commitments I made after listening to so many podcast episodes and hearing some of the bigwigs say they returned capital just to get a stinky investor out of the deal. Like, no, we really don't want your money. Like, here's a check. Here's all the interest, everything you'd make, buy, right? I never wanted to find myself in that position. And so I actually have always had this commitment that any investor that comes into our investments, we want to ensure that we have strong communication and everything, ability to comfortably talk. Now it's transitioned even further to where our conversations are very candid with our investors when they are, looking at investing with our group. We're not like every other group out there. We want to have that relationship with our investors, and we believe fully it is a two-way street. And I have that candid conversation, like, we're excited to get to know you, and I want to start with your questions. So sometimes I'll get on the phone with someone to look into their investments, and they'll have like canned answers and a prescribed, and I'm like, oh, I know. And you hear the keyboard clicking, and they're typing it in, and I'm like, that's good for them. It doesn't work for how we want to approach our company, right? And our investors. And we're like, okay, what are your questions? Where are your gaps? What do you already recognize? And let's please understand, this is a two-way street. You're looking at us, but we're also looking at you. We want to make sure that you're the best fit. If you're not the best fit for us, we know lots of other people that we can refer you out to, and we're happy to do that. But we also have to have trust in our investors so that we can do our jobs and we can focus and not have a lot of distractions coming our way. So that's a twist in the tail. And a lot of, I have found that, sometimes people just simply want investors and want money, but we're really curating our investor base, our investor community. And I look at the list of investors, and it makes my heart happy. And I'm thinking, we could all go sit on the beach with little umbrella drinks, and I'm pretty sure everybody would have a really great time. And I know that that's not corporate America talk. That's more an educator talking, like, let's cultivate community through this process.
Yeah, that's awesome. When you guys do deals, you set them up on a 3-year hold, 5-year hold, 10-year hold. What kind of time period are you looking at? What's a general projection of a return on a deal that you guys would bring out?
Yeah, so generally we were initially on, 3 to 5-year holds, and now we're looking at, probably 3 to 7. We're loving having contingency plans. If something happens in the market, right? If we have another pandemic, or it's not going to be another pandemic probably, but it's going to be something that catches the market off guard that we have to pivot and transition with. We're structuring, and granted, I will tell you this, because I've been raised in real estate, all of the debt that we have secured on every asset is strong. It was fixed. It wasn't, something that was going to adjust with, whatever is happening, because I remember the early 2000s. I remember, what happened in 2008 very, very clearly. I was in real estate, right before that. So all that to say, we have plans and then we have contingency plans to those plans to make sure how can we truly mitigate the risk? What is the worst case scenario? If we need to hold longer, are we capable to do that? Do we have the runway to do that? When we're looking at our returns, our minimum, like when we're evaluating, if we have a deal come across our table and it doesn't have a minimum of a 15% IRR, we're not entertaining it. That's not for our investors. If we're not coming close to doubling our investor, our investors, initial investment through the hold period, that's probably going to be see you later. It's not going to work for us. So we're really, those are kind of the two key metrics. Some investors are looking at cash on cash return. Also, we're trying to find at least a minimum of a 5% cash on cash. So we want to, it's a great way to vet your deal. Does this even work? But let's go deeper than that, because it's not just about like, oh, cool. Because you and I know that, okay, like pull this lever, do this, tweak that. Throw a refi in. You can do all sorts of things in your underwriting to make it say and tell the story you want it to tell. And so when you're looking at your underwriting, you're saying like, how many punches can I throw at this and still hit these returns? What if I have like a super high exit cap rate? Is this still going to meet my metrics? What am I going to do if there is never, do not include the refi. Like, let's not include refis in our underwriting so that we're not skewing the numbers at all. Really looking at, every single item and saying, worst case scenario, does this work? Can we hit our metrics?
Yeah, that's some good stuff there, Julie. I couldn't agree more with you there. And, one of the things I think we're seeing more in the market these days is, instead of having that 2 to 5 year hold, people have, after things kind of went berserk in 2021 with bridge debt and variable debt, investors that are wanting to be around for the long haul realize this is a long-term game and you got to be able to sail through any storm. And the way you sail through any storm is through low leverage fixed debt, because that's your base. And, the deals that you're seeing come to market now are folks who over leverage and have a variable rate loan. So for the people who can get in the market and acquire these deals now, you're probably going to see the best deals you've seen since 2008 and 9, Julie, like you were saying. Remember when everything went berserk with variable rate debt in the single family market? Now it's looking at it at the multifamily market. So this isn't a time necessarily to be like, oh my gosh, multifamily is a dead asset, I'm out of here. This is a scary time. It's more of a time to get with people who know what they're doing and make sure that they've got the right debt in place in strong markets with a great business plan, because valuations are coming down. And when there's fear in the market, that's the time when you want to be buying. And so for the folks in 2021 that have deals with bridge debt, they're coming to market now and in 2020. So I appreciate that. And your returns right in the same ballpark as what we offer. That 15% IRR is kind of where it's at. And if you can't get it, you keep looking. 5 to 6% cash on cash is kind of where things are at. And this is the changing market we're in. So I can just tell you've got passion for financial well-being for your investors. It's evident. What's one piece of advice you'd give to someone starting their journey in multifamily real estate?
If I say it, even if it's a passive investor or an active investor, depending on what you are, listener, it's a matter of taking action. The precipice of everything in life comes with action. Anybody on the sidelines just waiting to get into the game, they're going to be staying on the sidelines, making excuses every step of the way. Even if you step on the field and you get knocked around a little bit, even if you take a fall, whatever it is, you're on the field and you're learning. And you don't know what you don't know until you actually get inside and you get going. And so if it's finding a group where you can place a smaller investment, if it's whatever it is, you need to take that action. If you're an active investor and you're underwriting every single deal and you're scared to take action, and maybe you're trying to go it alone, so then you want to reach out and you want to partner up with people with more experience. That was one of the best things I possibly did. Was I love partnering with people with more experience and complementary experience. So now we're playing, and I always tell our investors, you're getting the all-star team. Like, every single person knows their lane and they play to their strength. I can't imagine something better. So figure out what it is that you are great at. It's not too complicated. Just look at what you love doing as a child. Like for me, I love talking. I love supporting people and encouraging people and helping people and empowering people. Like that comes out in everything that I do. But some of my friends, they love numbers. They've always loved numbers, or they like reading detailed, boring things. Like, great. You go into asset management, or you go more into the contract side of things. Like, figure out what you love doing and never waver against what you love doing. Peter Drucker, in his book, Managing Oneself, talks about that. Do what you love, do more of what you love. And then that's emphasized once again in Paul, what's his last name? I'm obsessed with his essay that I just was, like read recently, but it's called Do Good Work. And I'm dropping Paul's last name right now. But if you put that into Google, if you're listening, listen to that essay, because it will give you the chops to say, I got to take action and I need to do things that bring me joy. I need to follow curiosity.
Yeah, wow. I love it. In passive investors that are listening in, some action items you can take specific if you're trying to figure out what those are. You could be, hopefully you're listening to a podcast just like this, refer some of these podcasts over to your friends, go to real estate, local events, gatherings, hire a mentor, get on a call with some general partners like Julie or us, and you get to know them at a deeper level. Look for referrals from other people that are investing in multifamily that have done well, and hopefully you can find someone. I mean, the biggest thing for what we're seeing is just picking the right horse, the people who are in charge of these deals. And if you can align yourself to people that are running these deals that do a great job, you've put yourself on a much more likely chance of success. And Julie, you've worked with both single family homes and multifamily assets. What inspired the shift towards multifamily, and how would you compare both experiences if you got listeners that are like, do I like single family or multifamily?
Once you start thinking about it, and this is funny, my husband, he is looking to invest in small multifamily. So it's always good to have complementary portfolios. They make money in different ways. We invest in assets that are my company invests in assets that are 100 units generally, or larger. And so when you think about the difference between single family and multifamily, it's mitigating risk, it's reducing vulnerability, and it's increasing your profitability. When we're looking at single family, a lot of people have to evaluate, okay, meaning, no, this isn't just me. And I'm not, normally I would be like, okay, wait, I better just own this for myself. No. If you are interested in single family, you really need to look at and evaluate, am I a control freak? You got to do that internal evaluation and say, why do I feel like I need to be the sole owner? Why do I feel like I need to be the person in control? And what will happen if I have 10, 20, 30, 50, 100 of these properties? Did I really retire myself, or did I give myself a job? Right? So a lot of people want to look into real estate investing to diversify their portfolio. And then you have a camp of people who want to go into, the single family space because they're like, oh, well, then I can leave my job. Okay, great. You left your job. Now what? You have a different job. Maybe you don't even like that job as much. And so really evaluating what it is that you want. For my husband and I, we really want the freedom to be able to do more interactive work with the world. It's interesting. Like, it's always growing. I mean, the Conscious Investor is my platform, and it is a movement. I have a goal to make that a global movement. I have a goal to support people in really finding personal freedom, which transcends financial freedom. It includes that, but it's even more. And so how am I going to fund that? How am I going to have the time to pour into that? Well, if I have strong performing assets, if I am around a strong team where I'm contributing to that team, but I'm not the Lone Ranger on it, now I'm able to go and contribute to the world in other ways as well. So really, it comes down to two things: mitigating the risk, increasing the profitability. If I have single family and I lose a tenant and it's vacant for 2 months, what's happened to my profits? What's the line really look like at the end of the year? If I have a roof that needs to be replaced, if I have all of these larger ticket items that I'm going to have, if I'm holding that for 20 or 30 years, I will have those come across my plate. What's that going to do to my bottom line? When I am invested in large multifamily, I'm not even worrying about that. It's all budgeted in. It's a business plan. I'm buying an already operational, functioning business. An apartment building, a complex is a business that's already working. So great. I'm buying that and I know what to expect from it, and I can plan and structure everything like a business.
Yeah, that's great. You guys, hopefully you heard some of those key points right there. I couldn't agree more too, Julie, with some of the things you said. You know, just economies of scale. If you have one unit that's leased and that unit is now vacant, your occupancy just went to zero. Whereas if you have a multifamily deal and you got 100 units and you have 9 or 10 that are vacant, you're still 90% occupied. So that's a huge piece right there. I also really like how you can force value in multifamily. You know, you can bring in capital and you can actually drive NOI, and it's a little bit less dependent on what the market is doing. Still it is slightly, as we're seeing right now, but you just have a much bigger vehicle to move the value on in a much more impactful way for more people. And it allows you to bring a lot of investors with you. You know, it isn't just you in a single family deal. Most of the time it's just you or maybe one other person, whereas you might have 50 or 100 investors with you on this deal. And generally, you come in much more capitalized due to that, where you have enough of the funds needed up front to take care of your CapEx so that you can take care of the asset and take care of your residents. So that's some really good stuff there. And you've house hacked before. I wasn't even called that at the time, maybe, but for our listeners unfamiliar with the term, what is it exactly? I'm trying to fully understand it as well.
Right. Yes, it is a more recent term. I think it's probably been bounced around for the last couple of years. It can mean a variety of things, but the bottom line is you're living in your home and you're renting out something of your home. So in my case, I had an extra bedroom. I rented out the extra bedroom. Some people have a home and they can live on the top half of the home and lease out the bottom half of the home. And so anytime that your space is being, not a very friendly way of putting it, but invaded or complemented by someone else who is providing income to you so that they can stay there, now you're in the realm of house hacking.
Got it. Okay. Real quick, just kind of touching on, let's say you've got folks that are listening here. They're teachers. They're in a job. You've transitioned now to a real estate investor. What would be maybe your biggest 2 or 3 pieces of advice you could share with them? And then the next question I'm going to ask is just what was your biggest fear and how you overcame it?
Okay. So, people, if you're a listener and you're looking to make any transition, so maybe you're a passive investor and you want to transition or into passive investing, maybe you have single families, you want to make that transition. Anytime we're making transitions in life, we have to become extremely clear about what it is. What is the outcome that you are actually looking for? If you don't know what the outcome is, then you're going to find yourself building a lot of half-built bridges and becoming exhausted and frustrated. So no, what am I building towards? Am I building towards exiting my job? Am I building towards my retirement? Adding to my retirement portfolio? Am I building towards cash flow? Like, what is my end game here? So that's step one. Anytime you transition, know thyself. Like, look inward and know what it is. And if you have a spouse or a life partner, then you need to make sure, are we clear on this together? Anytime you're mixing, we have got money, we got to find all that clarity together. And then we've got to educate ourselves. But this is where a lot of people will say, I'm educating, and they'll just stagnate there in the education realm. So don't prolong that education. As soon as you know enough, like, that you have to do the third thing, which is take action. I'm obsessed with action. I will take action and I will trip my way forward. And that's what I've done in all of life. Like, lots of the stoic, writing, it's not, fortune favors the brave, but there are lots of things that talk about action. A lot of, just little sentences that will just remind you that action. Of course, I can't think of one off the top of my head right now that sounds really catchy. So you want to make sure you're doing those three things: clarity, education, action. And for me, anytime I find something that I am afraid of, I do it. I do not like fear holding me hostage. I refuse to give up my personal agency and my personal freedom because I'm afraid of something or someone. So and that's starts out as something very scary for people. This is why I like the sports that I enjoy. They push me physically, and that physical push pushes me internally as well. And really talk about forced appreciation. I have a lot of forced personal development in that. But if you're listening, you're like, oh my gosh, Julie, that sounds crazy. Well, for me, recently I was up in the mountains with my kids. We live in the mountains, and like they wanted to jump off. Water is something that I have a very healthy respect for. And my son's like, hey, we could jump off of this into the river. I'm like, okay. And it's icy cold, like icy cold. And what did I do? I didn't just like sit on the sidelines. I'm like, get your butt up there, do it anyway. I'm afraid, do it anyway. And when we practice that in our life, in the small dailies of life, then we're flexing that. And when it comes time, we can do it in every single part of our life. So embrace what I call micro discomfort every single day. Find one thing, super small thing that will make you uncomfortable, and lean into that and just do that. Maybe it's going into the coffee shop to buy your coffee and talking to a stranger. Maybe whatever it is. Now, my husband just shaved his beard, and it's been, I think, 10 years. That's like a medium discomfort, right? He'll have a beard back in a month. But I told him after he walked out, and we're like, whoa, okay, that's awesome. But you want to lean into yourself, like give yourself those opportunities.
Cool.
Find something that makes you uncomfortable.
I love that.
That's
no, that's really great. We're actually looking at going to one of Tony Robbins' events. He's got the UPW where you walk on coals, and I'm looking at having my 10-year-old come with me, and we're like, gosh, if we're walking on coals, we should probably be outside, walking on rough terrain to see if we can build some callus, just to see if there's any benefit of not getting burned. So it's minor, but I've always had these soft, sensitive feet. But now we go outside and we're like walking through the woods and it's just like, ow, this hurts. But it's exactly your talking. I get a little bit of micro discomfort every day, and it builds that muscle of taking courage, because you're right, fear will hold you hostage, and it's not a fun place to live in. So love that. Your podcast, The Conscious Investor, it goes deep into investors' mindset, right? Am I following that correctly? Can you share? Yeah, one or two pivotal mindset shifts that's transformed your real estate journey?
Whoa. Yeah, I'm like, let's narrow this down to one or two. One of the biggest mindset shifts I've had to really embrace, that's been most challenging for me, I've never shared this before, and that is accepting that all people can be good, but not all people will be for me. And that's okay. And that's a hard thing to accept. Like when we start to look into value statements, and this industry is very abundance mindset. It's very generous. It's very kind. And yet sometimes you can realize like some of it is actually self-serving. And that was really hard for me to embrace or to understand or accept or receive all of that. It's like, I thought people are great. And then you realize, okay, I actually have to trust and verify. I really have to do my due diligence on people and make sure that their actions are matching what they are saying. And it's not a value statement. They're still great people, but I have to make sure that that is always in line and congruent. That was, I think, not necessarily, it is a mindset shift. It's like one of those those awakenings where I realize, oh, that person's really nice. Oh, wait, they're not as knowledgeable as they lead me to believe they are. And so really accepting that and saying like, oh, that's great. They have a strong platform. Oh, they're out there. But I think that there could be some more experience to back this up.
Yeah. So if I heard right, you said accept that all people can be good, but not all people will be good for you. Is that correct?
Oh, thank you. We just co-created that. That's awesome. Okay. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. And I think that's a mindset shift that a lot of people have to come to acceptance with, of Exactly. And you can be friends with everybody, but it doesn't mean you have to be business partners with everybody.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah, great. Gosh, I think that's huge. I think that's something, especially when things are challenging in a industry, you start to see the true colors of people. So you gotta really go with your gut instinct in the beginning, and I think that that has been something that's been, you know, apparent for us as well. 99% of our business partners have been great. There's been one or two that I will never do another deal with, you know, and they maybe would
mhm.
never do another deal with me too. All good. You just didn't have similar values or core values. So I know what you're talking about. That was one. You got anything else? One more pivotal mindset shift to share with the listeners?
Find your voice. Don't be afraid to use your voice. What I had to rebrand myself, my personal identity had to go through a rebranding, and working with a high performance coach was a catalyst for that. So that mindset shift of I'm not just a teacher, which we're not ever just anything. Get rid of the word just, right? And so wherever I was at, and listener, wherever you are at, you have to say, okay, this is where I am, but I'm more than that. I am created to be multifaceted. I have all of these cool things within me, and it's so fun exploring. And so I have learned to really embrace curiosity is becoming super trendy. Maybe I was part of the trend setting team or something, because I've been following that curiosity for a while now. It's like, think of yourself as Mr. Potato Head. As one of my best friends, she uses this analogy. She's like, Mr. Potato Head was packed with all these accessories and different ears and eyes and lips and nose inside. And think of yourself as Mr. Potato Head. You have probably been wearing, I know I wore some of the same personas for a long time, for years. Well, you know what? You have other things inside of you. So I learned to, hey, let's put a scarf on. Let's put different glasses on. How does that feel? And discovering that your identity is far more than you give yourself credit for. And so taking myself outside of that box and receiving myself as I transform. And now I'm like, oh, I'm always transforming, and it's a good, healthy, beautiful, wonderful thing. But that's really a lot of times I find I do performance coach, and I find oftentimes people are in that box, and it's cozy and it's comfortable, but it's not the fullness of who you're created to be. And so finding that I can rebrand myself. Now I no longer even see myself as a teacher. Sorry, maybe overshare, but I just went through my closet and I'm like, wow, I don't like how this feels. It reminds me of this past identity. That's not even who I am. Even getting rid of clothing or things that feel like they're holding you back in something past. It's really powerful.
I, I I think we've talked about a lot of good stuff, but this is probably the most powerful piece for me at the end here, where you're talking about rebranding your personal identity.
Oh.
You know, how you see yourself is going to dictate what you do, how you behave, the success you have or don't have, the challenges you have, the way you see the world. It's your identity, how you see yourself. So when you digging in just a touch more, let's just say there's some listeners like, man, I would love a new personal identity. I'd love to see myself differently. You've done it. When you found a coach, how did you hire a coach? Where were you like, yep, this is my person? How did you go about doing that?
I landed on my coach by the grace of God. So I signed up for a mentorship program, and I thought, great, I'm going to learn the strategies of investing. That was also something else I chose to do early on. I dropped a lot of my seed investment money into a program I'm like, oh, I'm going to be bringing in other people's money. I better know what I'm doing. With that came access to a high performance coach. If I were looking for a high performance coach right now, I would look to people who I find that are successful. Lots of successful people. I won't say all, but most successful people work with a coach of some sort. And I would say, hey, I really admire what you've done. Have you ever worked with a coach? And ask them for a referral. And then when you are meeting with a coach, it's just as I mentioned earlier, how I meet with investors, it's a two-way street. Coaching is something where you are you are co-creating, you are expanding together. And so you want to make sure that you feel extremely comfortable with that person and that you feel confident that that person is going to be able to support you. And typically the coach doesn't have to be light years above where you are type thing. I find that a lot of my coaching clients are within proximity of my own development, and it's really interesting and it's fun. I'm like, wow, I remember that. That wasn't that long ago. And you just expand together, and it's a really fun experience. But definitely look to people who are successful that you admire, ask them for references. And just like you're going to hop on the call, and if you're passively investing and get on the phone with general partners and sponsorship teams, you want to get on the phone call with coaches. And generally coaches will do, a free 20-minute or maybe even a full session just to get to know you. And a good coach is going to want to get to know you to make sure they're not just going to be like, oh yeah, here, just sign up and we'll start our sessions. A good coach is going to say, let's make sure that this is a relationship that will work.
That's awesome. Most of the folks we have on our show, ladies and gentlemen, if you listen to our show a lot, you'll notice they've got coaching, they're working with a mentor, they've got proximity to certain folks that help them see themselves better than they are. This is a game of mindset. Life is a game of mindset for sure. And after you have hundreds of guests on and you meet highly successful people and they're all doing the same stuff, it becomes certain this is the way to move the needle. And if you don't have the time and resources, start reading books that can change your mindset. I'm reading a book right now called The Magic of Believing, and I read it probably 10 years ago. And it's crazy how much I don't remember of the book. And just a few ideas and concepts have been running through my mind lately from the book that have changed so much of how I'm interacting with people. And what you believe will become your reality. I think it's hokey, but it's just the way it is. So
it's the truth. It's like, I know they say if you dream it, if you believe it, you can achieve it. And it's like, it's true.
Right. And you have so many people that are like, oh, that's all hokey, that's ridiculous. And then you look at the results they're getting and they're pretty minimal. So I would understand that's probably why they feel that way. But once you experience it and get some of that new knowledge in your mind, watch out, things can change quick in a very positive way. So Julie, if people want to get a hold of you to learn from you or to get to know you more, how would they go about doing that?
Oh, please do. Dan and I are not just voices, and Mike, who's not on this episode, but we're not just voices here. We create content because we genuinely want to support you. And I love it when listeners from my show and when I guest on shows reach out and schedule time on my calendar. So please do that. You can head over to julieholly.com. And that's the back door. You only get there if you hear me on a podcast. And it just shows you everything that the brand has, because we do have our investment company. And then I have the Conscious Investor podcast and coaching. And so there's a calendar down there. Schedule a time. Let's talk. And if that feels like, Julie, whoa, you're rushing things, you don't want to hop on a call, that's okay. Head over to LinkedIn and connect up with me over on LinkedIn and mention that you heard me on this podcast. And I'll say one more thing. I love reading. It changed my life. And if you're labeling yourself as, I'm not a reader, I don't like reading, let me assure you, audiobooks count. Audiobooks weren't around 100 years ago or even 50 years ago in all reality. So audiobooks count. So listen to the books if you don't like reading, but don't make excuses. I used to run a book club, and I dipped into my teaching background, and I ran a book club for 3 years. We just ended it earlier this year because I had to really get focused. But if you read 8 pages a day, Monday through Friday, 5 days a week, you will read most books in 5 weeks. It's just setting aside 20, 30 minutes. Oh, Julie, I'm a slow reader. Well, I was a really horrible reader, horrible, slow reader. And the only way you're going to get better is if you actually take action and do it. You'll become your comprehension skills will increase. Your vocabulary will soar and flourish. But most importantly, you're going to engage your mind. I'm just looking at all the books that I've read, and I was never considered myself a reader, but my journey into commercial real estate investing has forced me, or it's drawn me towards reading. It is the best $15, $20 you can possibly spend on your own personal growth and development. So don't make excuses. Take action, get reading. Don't make excuses, get a coach. Yeah, it's going to feel uncomfortable. And if the amount of money doesn't make you feel uncomfortable, that's not the coach for you. You need to be uncomfortable with the checks that you are writing so that you are showing up and that I'm getting the value that I am looking for.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that too. That point on reading you just made. I wasn't a reader in high school, but once I started to read things that I really enjoyed, I love reading. It's just that I wasn't reading the right content. It wasn't of interest. So thanks for tuning into the show. If you enjoyed this episode and gained value from it, be sure to share it with a friend and leave us a rating and review.